Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
7 years old can be a very critical age in a human's life. It's the year we graduate from first grade to second grade. It also may be the year when you first participate in a sport that will shape your future. But for me, it was the age when my parents decided they wanted to lead separate lives. I grew up like any average girl, attended a good preschool, participated in sports, and had good friends. My parents, as I recall, were always in a good mood with each other and shared the joy of raising their daughter together. I have few memories of the bad times my parents had argued. The worst memory I recall is lying in my bed one night when I was 7 years old and having my parents come into my room and my father saying, "Tanya, your mother and I are getting a divorce." My immediate reaction was a natural instinct for a young child, which was to blame myself. I often had more than one birthday party as a kid. This sounds cool, but it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I'm a child of divorce. My childhood wasn't mine, it belonged to my parents. I lost myself in every effort to appease each side of my family. Shuffling alone between two separate lives meant that I was on the fringe of each family, never an insider. The people I loved most were never in the same room together, and many of them barely even knew each other existed. I missed out on events and celebrations because I would have to spend time with my other family. Children of divorce learn to cope with these struggles and instability by the age of 10. I no longer wanted to deal with it. I didn't want to live in two different homes with two different bedrooms, different clothes, different toys, different friends, and even different rules. I was a 10-year-old caught between a rock and a hard place. So one day I told my dad that I didn't want to visit anymore. It was a courageous and ignorant act, to be honest. We will never know if it was the right decision or not. But at the time, neither one of my parents possessed the emotional stability it would have taken to unearth a more positive solution. And so that was the way things went. The power struggle that had lain dormant between my parents erupted again, and this time it was directed at me. This time I was responsible for the discord. In one house, I was blamed, in the other, I was a victim. There were no more multiple birthday parties. Instead, there was stability and consistency in one house, anger and avoidance in the other. Choice is met with consequences, and as time went on, I fell out of touch with my dad's family. It's hard to stay in touch with people connected to someone we have pushed away. Cousins I used to play with were erased from my life. We never visited again. Was that because it's best to keep served ties cut? Or was it my punishment for being a horrible child? All I knew was silence and loss. When I was in my early teens, my mom remarried and I met new cousins. I learned new Christmas traditions and sat with new kids at the dinner table. Instead of being ushered from one family to the other, life settled down. Even though I heard from my dad only once or twice a year, life was fairly stable. But that changed again when my mom and stepdad split up during my first year of university. I tried to keep in touch with my family members every time I went home for the holidays. Again, I tried to please everyone while anxiety flooded my thoughts. Whom should I spend Christmas Eve with? Should I visit with this family or that one? Will they be offended if I don't make time to see them? Will they be offended if I don't bring presents? I would have loved to have everyone drop by and visit me, but that would not have gone very well at my mom's house. Instead, I diligently visited everybody on my own, carrying thoughtful little presents I bought on my student budget. I would make small talk and feel like an outsider. I was always the awkward guest, never the welcoming host. For 10 years after I graduated from university, I lived away from home. Not a single family member from any one of my four families, save for my mom, came to visit, called, or even let me know when they flew through town. Yet, every time I went home for Christmas, I scheduled visits, bought presents, and made time to see as many people as I could. I did this to make them feel good, not me. 2 years ago, I moved back home, and now I live less than a day's drive away from all four of my families, their new spouses, and young kids. We're all connected on Facebook, but my mom is still the only person who ever calls or visits. When I hear that a family member passed through town but didn't call, it saddens me. But I realized that they don't call because they don't really know me. To them, I was never a fixture. I was only ever around a few Christmases here and there, and although they were my family, I was never theirs. They don't know that they are just one of several people spread across four different families that I wasn't able to keep in touch with. Sometimes divorce spreads us too thin to make anything real, lasting family connections. This summer, I am getting married and starting my family. I'm trying not to have too many expectations. I know no family is perfect, but my soon to be husband is the king at keeping in touch with people. He's persistent, charismatic, forgiving, and loyal. He's teaching me what family means. Together, we will teach our kids to reach out to one another with compassion and to stick by each other through times of darkness. I'm looking forward to joy and friendship with my new family, and I plan to do everything I can to stay married.
A teacher earns the respect of his students and also serves as an exemplary role model. Unfortunately, student adoration of teachers is on the wane in society now. Students owe teachers some degree of loyalty for contributing to their success in life. But what if you discovered that your teacher was on the run from the law? How would you feel? Would you want to know? Lend an ear to my story. I am Erica, and I am 17 years old. I live with my parents and my sister Felicia. My lifelong dream was to excel in all areas of life. I did well in school, and my parents noticed my stellar intellect from an early age. So they encouraged and supported my education in every way. I loved and respected all the teachers who ever taught me. I respected them for their efforts, and I took a dim view of my fellow students who didn't respect them. I even respected the teachers who taught me unimportant subjects. Though I respected all my teachers, past and present, I hadn't yet found any worthy of being a good role model for me to follow until one day a new chemistry teacher, Mr. Franklin, came to our school when our previous teacher resigned to travel abroad with her family. From the very first moment when he first entered the classroom, I was charmed by his charisma. He seemed quiet, self-confident, and venerable. But it wasn't just me. All the students were impressed by his presence. His explanations were much clearer than our previous teachers. With every passing day, I loved him more and more. I had chosen a good role model. I was amazed by his resume qualifications and his erudition and experience. I liked to chat with him on breaks to benefit from his experience, wisdom, and insights. He never indicated that I was an annoyance to him. Instead, he welcomed all my questions openly and cheerfully and shared his knowledge freely. I didn't want to let him down, so I studied very hard. He was so worldly and street smart that we nicknamed him the Thug because he seemed to know exactly how the world operated and how to get around obstacles. We figured he was either an alien from space or a thug wanted by the law. Then one day while browsing the internet, I came upon a strange coincidence. I read about an intelligent serial killer who committed brutal crimes without leaving a trace. Some witnesses had seen him and described him to the police. The resultant face sketches looked exactly like Mr. Franklin, as if he had a twin brother. The first thought that came into my mind was that this was one weird coincidence. When I went to school the next day, I showed him the news article and the sketch of the serial killer. When he saw the sketch, his features darkened. He asked me where I had read this news, and I told him that it was from a news website. He agreed that the similarity between him and the sketch was uncanny, but he seemed unconcerned, disinterested even. I was wondering if Mr. Franklin were to be the killer, what his motivation for killing might be. The next few days strengthened my suspicions when I heard about a murder in our neighborhood, which coincided with a time when Mr. Franklin was not at school. When he subsequently returned to school, he looked worried and nervous. If he were the killer, why would he risk coming back to school? I then began to consider that he might be planning to kill me because I knew his dirty little secret. I had trouble for sleeping for the next few days. Then one day after visiting one of my friends, I was walking home when I sensed that someone was following me. I began walking more quickly, and the footsteps sped up proportionately. Suddenly, I felt a touch on my shoulder. I spun around to see Mr. Franklin. He gestured for me not to speak. I nodded okay. He then told me that he has a brother named Rodriguez, who was actually the serial killer that I had shown him in the news article. He said his brother followed him everywhere to torment him and cause trouble for him. He told me that he had to leave the city, and I was very sad to hear that. He hoped that we would meet again someday. After his disappearance from school, my mind was full of questions. Was he telling the truth? Was he truly innocent? I hope I find out the answers to my questions someday. Could you live with yourself if you found out your whole life turned out to be a lie? That you are not who you thought you were? My story may strike you as a silly Hollywood drama, but every word of it is true, I swear. My name is Tasha, and I am 19 years old. I am in the 12th grade, and I live with my family in a posh mansion. I was an only child, so my parents spoiled me by giving me everything I could ask for. Love, protection, the finest education, material things. My father always worried for my safety. He was so protective that it annoyed me, though I loved him for it. I lived the life that every teenager could only dream about. I had a car, money, and the ability to travel the world if I so desired. The only strain on my existence, as it were, was when I discovered a secret about my life, which is what this story is about. It was the first day of a new school year. The school day was over, and I was walking home with my friends when I noticed a woman standing across the street. She was watching me closely, as if she knew me. Perhaps I resembled one of her friends or relatives. This situation repeated itself on many occasions. Her stalking of me made me feel uneasy, even though she didn't look threatening in the least. So one day, I decided to exit out of the back side of the school instead of the front side. Then I peeked around the corner of the school building to observe her. She was scanning the exiting students carefully, one by one. She looked annoyed that she couldn't find me. Then I sneaked around behind her and tapped her on the shoulder. When she turned around and saw me, her face lit up with joy. I told her that I had seen her watching me every day and asked her why she was doing so. It seemed that she wanted to burst into a lengthy conversation, but instead she stopped herself and calmly handed me a letter. Then she began crying and left me quickly. I resisted opening the letter until I got home, sat down, and got comfortable. Then I proceeded to open the letter. It contained a calendar date and a simple note. Research this date and you will know everything. I browsed the internet for events that happened on that date. There were many hits. One hit was a news article about a woman who had killed her husband. Her husband had been constantly abusing her and her baby girl, so the woman had sold her daughter to a rich man to protect her life. When her husband discovered what she had done, he began beating her severely, and in self-defense, she killed him. I was shocked to read that the rich man she had sold the baby to was none other than my dad. I felt like I was in an Asian Indian movie. I'm in a quandary as to what I should do. Do you have any suggestions? Any advice? Please.